Hello again, and welcome to the How to Life podcast. I'm Dr. Laura Jaggett, and you are listening to episode 34. In the last episode, we talked about travel and language, and about how both can add so much to your life and how it can enhance your perspective about the world in the best way. That conversation sparked so much interest and a lot of verbal longing to get back out into the world and travel, explore, and enjoy. I personally cannot wait. I really miss the people and I miss the adventure. So, since the travel bug is stirring, I thought we should continue along that same theme in this episode. Today, I am speaking with Brooke Schoeneman, the founder of herpackinglist.com, which is a packing website. That's right, a packing website with packing lists, articles, gear reviews, ideas, support, masterclasses, and so much more, all designed to help you minimize your baggage and maximize your travel experience. If you are a chronic overpacker, or you're stressed about packing, getting tired of always lugging around too much stuff and you want to pack lighter but you have no idea how to start, then you're really going to enjoy this show. Let's welcome Brooke and learn how herpackinglist.com could be the spark that opens the door to freedom from clutter. Hi, Brooke. Welcome. You're coming to me from Australia, correct?
Yes, just north of Sydney, Australia right now. Yep.
All right. Well, you don't sound Australian. We'll talk about that more, but please introduce yourself and tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laura, for having me on. I'm excited to get to talk today about our subject. It's something that's obviously very near and dear to me, running a packing website. I run the site Her Packing List, and we help women to pack smarter and travel confidently. I started this site probably at the end of 2010, and it is now what I do full time. As you commented on, I am not Australian. I do not have an Australian accent, but I have been here 11 years. It'll be 12 years in March. I traveled the world and then decided to set up shop down under.
So the topic of this podcast is minimalism. It's how to pack light, particularly about travel, but this can apply to life in general. The less you're carrying, the more you can enjoy your experience.
Exactly. Our mission at Her Packing List is to let you have your energy be available for the experience instead of worrying about your luggage or what you're going to wear or how you're going to get it from point A to point B. And it spills over into daily life. And that's what I have found over the years of running a packing site. Once you start to pack light, you want to go more minimalist at home and vice versa.
I've started doing that myself over the years, and I find the more I get rid of, the more I realize, what else can I get rid of? I'm living just fine without all this extra clutter.
Clutter. Exactly. That word sends shivers down my spine.
How did you start this site? 2010. What brought you to the decision, you know what, I'm going to start a packing website?
Well, it's definitely evolved over the years. When I started it, it wasn't the mission exactly to pack light. It was to pack smart. It was to help women to prepare for their trips. And a lot of people find it super stressful. I had been traveling around the world and living in various places with nothing more than a backpack up until then. So it just made sense to kind of use my knowledge to help others on the site. And over the years, packing smarter has become more and more about packing lighter as well. It's not just having an organized bag. It's about minimizing the weight on you. You don't realize how much extra stress you're adding to your travel experience when you're carrying this heavy bag or lugging this heavy suitcase.
Did you ever yourself pack too much and then you just came to a point, this is unnecessary?
Well, that's interesting. I feel like personally, I've always been someone who's been a little bit more on the lighter side of life. I think when I studied abroad, the first little light bulb went off about how much stuff I actually need in my life to feel happy. Because I went and I spent an entire semester abroad with just a suitcase of stuff and a backpack. Like, that's it. And then when I came home, instead of feeling really excited about opening my closet doors and seeing all of my clothing, it was kind of like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. And it had the exact opposite impact on me. It felt like a weight. And I started decluttering. I started getting rid of stuff. And that was kind of like the first thing. But then the more I traveled, the more I realized the less stuff I needed. And it just got less and less. And then I realized just having less weight on my shoulders made me happier. I hated standing around the airport with stuff on me. So it has definitely evolved, but it's a mindset shift. I think people, they don't care until they have their own experience that puts them over the edge. There has been this one travel experience in particular. So I think it was 2012, and I was on a press trip. We went to Oman for 10 days, I believe it was. And everyone else racked up with these gigantic suitcases, and I had a backpack. And at the time, that was actually a lot of stuff compared to what I pack now. But I racked up with this backpack and a little day pack, and everyone was like, how in the world can you travel with just that amount of stuff? And they have these like huge checked suitcases, right? And I told them, and I remember saying this to them, I said, my actual goal is to pack that tiny day pack right there and nothing more. That's what I want to pack. And a few years later, I actually did a trip where I packed just the day pack.
For a 12-day trip.
Yeah.
Across the world.
Yeah. You need so little. You actually need so little in life.
How do you get one to understand that they need so little, or how do they come to that realization themselves?
Okay, so there are a few ways that people come to her packing list. And the first way is they are just packing for a trip. They don't know what to do, so they come and find our packing list. They probably haven't had a bad experience. They're just preparing. Then they see all this other content. It kind of opens their minds a little bit more. But the main person is probably the person who has already had a bad travel experience. They have overpacked. They had to pay excess baggage fees. They hurt themselves because they had to carry this insanely large backpack for 3 months, So those people, they're coming and they're like, how do I pack lighter? How do I pack smarter? How can I only have a carry-on bag? We've been curating packing lists for destinations and activities across the globe. These are from people who have actually taken the trip. They're not all for me because I haven't done everything. So people go on a trip, they want to contribute, they'll share what they packed. So it's been used in this situation. So we have those packing lists, and then we have travel gear reviews. So that helps you to choose the right type of gear. It helps you to choose the gear that's going to help you to pack more minimal. And we have packing tips in general. So packing light tips, packing more organized. And we also have just female travel advice in general that helps you to prep for your trip and to travel more confidently.
Now, you're specifically geared towards the woman. Do women have more trouble with packing than men?
I definitely think so. I think we're more accustomed to using a lot more lotions and potions and beauty products and hair products than men do. I mean, I know plenty of men who have trouble, but most just think, okay, t-shirt, jeans, I'm good to go.
What things can you sort of dispel and maybe bring some awareness to people who think they need a lot because they're going to be without the amenities that they're usually accustomed to?
Oh man. Okay. The laundry one is a big thing. You can do washing abroad. You can do washing in the middle of your trip. It's a scary thought for a lot of people is to hand wash things in the sink. They're just like, that doesn't compute. But if you can get your head around that, that's a big one. So I am a big proponent of being able to hand wash things, especially like socks and underwear, and letting them hang dry. Because I can rewear certain clothing items like jeans or pants or even shirts if they're not disgusting or smelly, several times before I wash them. So I tell people pack no more than a week's worth of clothes and recycle that depending on how long your trip is. That's the bare minimum base packing light tip. No more than a week's worth of clothes.
And yeah. I take it at this point you pack lighter than that.
I definitely do pack lighter than that personally. I have really, really pared down. I have recognized that I don't need much. I feel comfortable re-wearing things or refashioning it in different outfits and different ensembles. And when it comes to clothing, like travel clothing, if you invest in the right types of fabrics, like merino wool or bamboo, those things actually tend to smell less meaning you don't need to wash them as much.
And then also having to drag around days worth of dirty clothes is just terrible.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely terrible. And then it makes everything else in your bag smell bad. Or you keep it in a plastic bag and then the smell just becomes even worse. So I tend to have fewer things and I wash as I go, especially socks and underwear. That is a non-negotiable for me. So you just make it a part of the habit. When you're taking a shower or when you're washing up for bed, you just wash your socks and underwear at the same time. And then you don't have to put stinky ones back into your luggage.
So some of the bulkier items, well, let's talk about that. Like, what do you
Okay.
do about shoes, especially as a
Ah,
woman?
okay, this is a hot topic right now. We're actually talking about travel shoes in my community. And as a part of my recent packing class, which we can talk about as well, I have been posing the question like, could you travel with just one pair of shoes? And that's a tough one. I mean, for me, I try to do just two pairs of shoes. So I'll pack one, wear one.
What types of shoes do you personally bring?
On my feet, I have the most comfortable shoes that I have, a good walking shoe. That is the most important thing when you're traveling is having a comfortable walking shoe. If you don't have a comfortable shoe, you're not going to enjoy yourself. You do so much walking when you travel. So that is key. And then usually in my bag, I'll try to include something that's a little bit nicer or dressier. It depends on your trip, obviously, how long you're gone, all that kind of stuff.
You can usually pair a dress with just a nice pair of flat sandals, which just slide into a little pocket.
And if you haven't heard of Teaks, I highly recommend Teaks. They're the fold up ballet flats. I love mine. I've had them for years. They dress up. I've worn them to weddings, but they fold up and so they pack in your bag quite nicely. So I do love those.
Now, what about outerwear? Sometimes you need to bring some protection. So what do you recommend on that?
Layers. So I tend to avoid anything that's actually bulky. And instead of packing like a huge bulky coat or wearing a bulky coat, I'll wear a few smaller layers that can layer together to give me that warmth. But then if it's actually a warmer day, you can take off a layer and you can, use those to create different looks, different outfits, and you have more bases covered.
What are your thoughts on windbreakers?
A packable windbreaker is a great option, and layering that over your other layers is key.
So continuing on, let's talk about undergarments, underwear, socks, bras, anything that you wear underneath your clothes. What do you recommend on the numbers for those?
Personally, let's say I wear one and I pack probably three more or four. It depends. Underwear is small, but don't go crazy. It's the easiest thing that you can like hand wash as well. But it depends on the type of trip that you're taking. Like if you literally won't have time to wash them, then you probably need to pack a few more pairs. But also look at some quick drying options for that purpose because you want to be able to wash them and have them ready to go the next day. And a lot of people in my community, they like to, in terms of like bras, some have been using like swimsuit tops or
Right.
tankinis as,
Mm-hmm.
another option. So that's something you can look into if you're looking for more versatility. Socks, look at like smart wool. And I would recommend like definitely think about that quick drying material. I think everyone should have at least one full outfit of clothing that's made from fabric that dries quickly. So in a pinch, you can always rinse it, freshen it up, and it's going to be dry for you.
What about, I'm going to call them potions, lotions, perfume? Is it worth dragging that along or do you just buy it when you get there?
Well, it depends. So there are lots of things to think about when it comes to these things. Like, do you have an ailment or do you have really sensitive skin and you need to use a specific product that's hard to get in other places? Then yes, you probably want to think about packing it. So there's that, depending on your personal needs. But generally, if you can find products that do double duty, you want to pare down as much as possible. I repackage everything, even eye cream, which comes in a tiny container. You don't need that for your trip usually.
What do you mean by repackage?
So put it into smaller containers. Like I even use contact lens cases to put like eye cream in or BB cream because if I'm going away for a week, I don't need an entire container.
Yeah.
So if you can repackage everything, you can have more options in a tiny space. And that's how you're going to save on weight and space.
And what are your thoughts on buying things? Let's say you're going to the beach, just buy sunblock when you get there.
Yeah, well, it depends on where you're going. Obviously, that might be more difficult in certain parts of the world. But yeah, definitely buy it there. It makes it so much easier in transit. And you're going to spend money on that sunscreen anyway. You're going to use it up anyway. So you might as well just wait till you get there to buy it.
And you can just donate it to the next traveler that you see on your way
Yep.
out if you don't want to bring it back home with you.
Yep. Good travel karma there.
What about pajamas?
Well, it depends again on your personal preferences. I am fine with a long t-shirt or an underwear or leggings. So leggings are a really good option if it's going to be colder. You can wear them as pants, you can wear them with tunics or dresses, and you can wear them to bed. But, a really thin pair of like sleep shorts is what I've always resorted to,
Mhm.
and like a tank top. And I usually just use something that's already in my travel wardrobe, and I'll hand wash and rotate it around as necessary.
Do you have a system for packing your clothes? Like, I assume you don't just like throw them in a bag and go. Do you roll them? Do you fold them? Is there a technique? And is that beneficial to people?
Okay. It varies. Nowadays, I generally pack super light, but I've always been a roller and I use a packing cube.
Yeah.
That's generally been how I work. I want to compress my clothing as much as possible. And packing cubes are so great for this. I know a lot of people when they pack, they use like 5 packing cubes. I use one. And I get this kind from Eagle Creek, which is compressible. So it zips it even smaller. And that's been brilliant for my packing style. If I'm looking for clothes, I just pull out the packing cube.
I know people who do not know what a packing cube is. So will you go ahead and just tell everyone here in case there are some listeners that don't know what you're talking about?
I love introducing people to packing cubes for the first time. It just like changes, it revolutionizes the way that they pack. So this is amazing. It's basically in its name, a little cube that you put your clothing into and then you zip it up. So instead of putting everything directly into your suitcase on top of each other, you keep it into these little cubes that fit so nicely inside. So that's a packing cube.
Yeah, I discovered one and it was life changing. I'll tell you a story. I was in South Africa for 3 weeks and I bought an Eagle Creek carry-on bag so I could just put it in the overhead bin. I was very proud of myself because I thought I was really, going minimalistic. And I did for the most part. People were saying, how can you travel for 3 weeks with just that? But I probably had 4 packing cubes. I had one with all my undergarments in, one with all of tops, one with bottoms, and then the other one I think was for, toiletries and stuff. But even after that 3 weeks, there was probably 40% of the things that I brought I didn't use. So I realized I could really, really take that down several notches.
That is so funny because it's something I hear all the time.
But it was very convenient to have everything in those little bags. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
oh, I just need a pair of socks here and my pajamas. They're in this cube. So I didn't have to go digging through the whole bag. I was at the airport and these poor girls had to, at the security, they had to open up their bags and it was like an explosion. Everything. They were so flustered because they couldn't get it back in.
Exactly. I mean, that's like my worst nightmare is being at airport security and having to open up my bag and having like my underwear on display for everyone. So now everything has its own little pouch inside my bag. I had one of these experiences years ago when I was staying in hostels, and these girls had probably like 80-liter, like big backpacks full of clothes. And in order to get to their stuff, they basically put it all into the floor into a huge pile in the hostel. And it was just a nightmare. Meanwhile, I pull out my packing cube.
What's the mindset shift? How do people or how do you encourage people to shift their minds about packing lightly?
Well, first off, I always tell people to start small. You have to start on the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say you just go to your closet, you see all these options, and then you have to pick just a few things. You feel like you don't have much. But if you start from the opposite end of the spectrum, we just pick out a few things, put them in your bag, and you're like, okay, how can I build off this and give it more purpose? It's kind of like making yourself feel like you have more, even though you end up with the same amount. Another thing is you need to give yourself a goal. So a lot of times people will come into like our community and they will say, I just want to pack as light as possible. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that look like for you? Because tomorrow you could take out 2 t-shirts and you're packing lighter, but is that what you mean by I want to pack as light as possible? So if you want to pack in this carry-on size bag, you need to visualize it. You need to pick out that bag and figure out a way to make it work. And that's the only way you're going to probably really do it. I often tell people it's not going to happen overnight. It's a process because you're probably not going to go from this person who's packing a gigantic checked bag to a small backpack in one go. You're going to try this next step and be like, okay, that was better, but there's still things where I can improve on. And then you make more changes and you make more changes. So give yourself a little bit of leeway there. Remind yourself it's a process, but definitely set a goal.
What is your favorite go-to traveling outfit?
Okay, so obviously it depends on the trip, but usually it always involves a pair of comfortable shoes.
Number one.
And my icebreaker bliss wrap. It is a merino wool long cardigan wrap top. And I've had this top for probably 4 years, and I will cry the day that it falls apart. Because I wear it all the time. Seriously, it is my go-to piece. It's light enough that you can wear it when it's warmer, but you can layer it with other things to create that warmth. It's black. It kind of dresses up, dresses down, super comfortable. So that's always in it. And obviously, I want to have a couple of layers in there in some way, shape, or form, because the more purpose I have in my travel outfit, the more options I'm going to have when you combine that with what I pack. Again, it just depends on where you're going, but layers, my merino wool top, comfortable shoes, and I usually will probably throw a scarf into the mix. I like the Speakeasy travel scarf. It has a hidden zipper pocket inside, so you can put things like your passport in it, and no one would know.
And what are you wearing? Pants, hiking pants, jeans? What do you do?
Depends on the trip. But I do like jeans. If I'm going on a short trip, I'll probably wear jeans. But I have anatomy pants, which are super lightweight, quick drying, stretchy pants. These can dress up. They can take you out for hiking, like light hiking. They're super comfortable, so you can wear them on a plane. They're a bit more luxury. They're a bit expensive, but I've had mine for years, and they do have a lifetime guarantee. So they're definitely something I recommend. And I also have another pair of pants that's similar. It's the Kathmandu flight pants. So they kind of look almost like normal pants, but they have like a hidden zipper pocket on the side. They're made from stretchy fabric that is water resistant. So I have a lot of different options.
On your website, do you have recommendations of manufacturers or articles of clothing?
Yeah, definitely. All throughout the site, we have a travel resources page at the top that you can click and kind of see like some of our favorite brands. If you join our mailing list, I'm always talking about certain brands. If you join our community, you will learn the brands over and over again that I talk about. So yes, definitely.
On your website, you have a masterclass.
Yes.
I'm going to let you tell us all about that. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So we have just completed our first masterclass. It is a 5-week class called the Handbag Packing Masterclass. Now, for people who don't pack ultralight, this might shock you a bit, but like I said earlier in this conversation, I once traveled with just a 12-liter handbag. It was a messenger bag, but technically it's labeled a handbag. And I went for 3 weeks overseas with that handbag, and the article I wrote about it has become one of my most popular articles on the site, and it has inspired people over the years to want to pack lighter, and people still talk about it. So I got the idea this year that I would start a live hands-on 5-week challenge, basically, where we pack for a 1-week trip in a handbag. So we've just finished up our 5th and final week, and I feel like it's been a massive success.
What's the first week like? What are their expectations, or are there nerves? Is it kind of like going through withdrawals?
Well, we do it in a way so that we focus on a different area of packing each week. And I just tell people to trust the process, because it is a bit daunting. We're thinking about things completely differently for this class. The first week is when I kind of give them a little pep talk and motivation, and we pick our handbags and we do some measurements and we find out how big that handbag is. People are like, this is never going to work, but they're also really excited. And we start just by looking at our bare minimum essentials. That's like the first week. So we just break it down week by week. And at the end of it, people feel like they could take this trip. So that's what we're doing. We're just changing mindsets about packing.
And this even translates into their personal lives, their home life. When you realize that you can travel with so little, take a look at your home and you probably don't need most of what you have there.
Definitely. That's a common thread throughout the years is that once someone learns how to travel with less, or they go on a big trip and all they have is a backpack, they come home and they're like, wow, I really don't need to have this much stuff in my life. I didn't miss it. I didn't need it. I didn't use it. I got by without it. So they start to kind of minimize and declutter at home, or vice versa. If they start the other way, packing lighter is easier.
In your personal experience about minimalism or minimizing your stuff, what have you found that it's done for your psyche, your outlook on what you need and how it impacts the experiences in your life?
Well, it's all been tied to travel for me. Instead of buying things, I've spent my money over the years on the experiences of travel. And I think that's kind of like the biggest takeaway for me is that I get more joy out of the experience. I get more joy out of taking classes. I get more joy out of seeing new things and trying new restaurants than buying a new pair of shoes. But also, there's that whole clutter aspect. Like if I feel like things are getting cluttered, if I go and clean and reorganize things, I'm calmer. I feel like I can focus.
There's I think a meme. I mean, it's a meme or a quote or something. It says, external clutter is internal clutter on display.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes, I believe it.
What have you found is the lure of collecting things or taking many things with you on your trip? What do you think that comes down to?
Okay, so when it comes to overpacking and like specifically packing for a trip, it's the fear of the unknown. And you don't know what's going to happen as soon as you leave your home. You have no control over that. You have no control over whether or not it rains or if your flight is delayed or what you'll be able to buy at your destination. So people feel like they need to have these things because they're afraid. That's the main reason for it.
Wow, I never even thought about that, but that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And people can be soothed by whatever you need. You can probably buy it wherever you are. You can get it somewhere.
Exactly. That's why in the first week of the handbag packing masterclass, it's about your essentials. And I literally tell them if you have your ID, if you have a source of money, and you have any essential medications, you're going to be fine.
What's your take on the cell phone?
I think it's essential. It makes life easier. It makes it easier for you to get what you need.
I think it's essential too.
Yeah. But I used to travel without one and I used to get by and I went to crazy places without a cell phone. So there's that too.
Do you ever take photos on your trips or you just keep them in your mind and enjoy the experience?
I do take photos, but I definitely am someone who prefers to take fewer photos because it distracts me from the moment. It distracts me from what's actually going on. And I understand it both ways. Like I can see the other perspective, obviously. But I think if you are a person who, after the experience, writes it down or takes notes or journals it, I think when you write something down afterwards, you tend to remember it more. So that kind of solidifies it in your brain. And then you take time to actually think about what you just saw. It also helps you remember.
Do you yourself journal on your trip?
I'll take notes. So I've always had like a little notebook with me and I'll do like bullet points and I'll just basically write down notes like lunch at such and such place, bought new shirt, tried out this cafe. And it will bring back more memories just being able to look at that note than if I even wrote an entire piece about it.
Now, you have a podcast also.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the podcast.
So the podcast is a little fresh, a little new still. I started it, obviously because of the pandemic and people not being able to travel as much. I wanted a way to kind of focus on those topics that were offshoots of what we talk about on the site. So things like minimalism at home, or it's like even decision fatigue or being productive. And then talking about them in relation to your day-to-day life, but then also tying it back into travel, everything that we do. And so it's called the unpacking list. So we're unpacking different topics, and it's more for the curious and smart, adventurous person, I would say.
Going back to the master class, at the end, what are the feelings of the participants? How do they feel about the whole experience?
They are completely in awe of what they've been able to achieve. And they are actually shocked that they were able to pack for a trip, a 1-week trip, in their handbag. I'm so proud of everything that they've done. It's been great.
This was the first time you did this masterclass?
Yes, it's definitely something we're going to do regularly. And the next class is going to start sometime in January 2021.
So how can people find you and sign up for this class?
You can go to herpackinglist.com/masterclass, one word, and that'll take you to the page about it, and it'll have a waitlist sign up.
How many people do you have in your class?
About 60. So I wasn't sure what to expect with that many people, but it worked out well. So I'll definitely be opening up to at least 60 people next go.
How do you do the class? Is it through a series of emails, or are they Zoom lectures? What do you do?
So this is run within my community, HTL World. And each week I do a live video session. So it's like about 1 hour. I stream live to a YouTube live stream. So it's unlisted. So if you're in the group, you get the link. And then they get the whole week to kind of focus on that topic, to do the assignment, and then they post up their result into the community. So we all get to see it and participate together. So it's a very hands-on learning experience. And I did it that way so that people around the world could join in and they could actually participate instead of having it be like 5 classes, 5 days in a row. Like no one's going to have the time for that these days. So
that sounds really fun. And how can people get into your community?
It is community.herpackinglist.com. You just click join and you answer 2 questions for me, and then you get to join in. I urge people to, once they actually take the trip, to come and give us the real life feedback of what happened.
What else do you have on the horizon?
Well, I am planning to do a workshop on creative ways to minimize and deliquify your toiletry and beauty kit.
And where can we find that class? That's a good one.
Go to herpackinglist.com and get on the mailing list, and I will definitely share when that is going live.
Brooke, this was a really fun conversation. I love minimalism. I love packing lighter. I like getting rid of stuff. I'm completely on board with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun to talk about this.
You're great, Brooke. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
How clever is it to start a packing website? Although I have really improved in minimizing what I bring on a trip, I realize I can get even better. If you want to learn to travel lighter as well, head over to herpackinglist.com. There is so much good information there. More about Brooke and how to find her will be listed in the show notes for this episode, howtolife.com/034. If you like this travel episode, I recommend episode 33 as well, Words and Worlds, How Language and Travel Can Enhance Your Life. I also have a short little mominar on my YouTube channel about packing like a pro. There you can see what a packing cube looks like and how to really get a lot of stuff into it to maximize the space in your bag. All the podcast episodes and the YouTube mominars can be found on my website, howtolife.com. Please join me next week for the last episode of the year. This year being 2020 and the first year of the How to Life podcast. Wow. I can't believe that in January 2020, I did not know I was going to do a podcast. And now, by the end of this year, I will have produced and published 35 shows. Life is fun, you know? If you're having fun, please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. And if you would hit the 5-star rating button before you sign off, I would greatly appreciate that. Those 5-star ratings and the extremely kind reviews have been incredibly helpful in the success of this show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week for the final show of 2020, a year in review. It's going to be fun and maybe a little emotional. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Until then, friends, have a joyous and wonderful week. May blessings surround you, and may the spirit of the season inspire you to extra kindness and grace. Love, smile, encourage, and uplift. And may you receive that yourself tenfold. Be well, everyone. Life is beautiful. You got this.